Okay, so for U.S. citizens living abroad, many of you know the Consular Report of Birth Abroad, the CRBA. It's absolutely vital, right? Your child's proof of U.S. identity, basically from birth.
That's right. It's Form FS-240.
But here's something that maybe trips people up, even informed parents. That document, the CRBA, it often needs this extra, very specific kind of trust stamp, an apostille.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially before overseas places, schools, government offices will actually accept it. So our mission today, let's demystify this. Let's do a deep dive into the FS-240 and that all-important apostille seal.
Absolutely. And what's really interesting here, I think, isn't just that it's important, but why. This apostille, it sounds like a small bureaucratic detail, but it's actually a pretty smart solution to a big international problem.
Is it?
Well, over 190 countries trust each other's official documents. The apostille is part of that system. So this deep dive hopefully gives you a shortcut, helps you understand the mechanics, why it works this way, and crucially, where families can lose precious time.
Right, because delays are the enemy here.
Exactly. And our source for this is an article called Apostille, Your Child's Consular Report of Birth Abroad. It really lays out the journey.
Okay, so let's start with the basics again. The CRBA, Form FS-240. Issued by a U.S. embassy. Proof of U.S. citizenship from day one. So why isn't that enough? Why would an overseas school or, say, an immigration office or one of those golden visa programs, why wouldn't they just take it? It seems like it should be straightforward.
It does seem that way, doesn't it? But you've hit the core issue. Inside the U.S., yes, a CRBA has the same legal weight as a state birth certificate,
Right.
but internationally, it's different.
How so?
Because it's a federal document. It's issued by the U.S. federal government via an embassy. So only the U.S. Department of State, back in D.C., can actually authenticate it for use abroad.
Ah, okay. So the embassy issues it, but only state can vouch for it internationally.
Precisely. The apostille, which comes from the Federal Office of Authentications, is basically the State Department saying, yes, this signature on this FS-240 is legit. It was properly issued. It's an authentication of the document itself. And here's where the Hague Apostille Convention comes in. It's this big international treaty, right? Designed to make authenticating documents way simpler between member countries.
Correct.
So if your destination country is part of the Hague Convention, and many are, that apostille is usually all you need. It's like their universal trust stamp.
But what if they're not part of the Hague Convention?
Then it gets a bit more old school. You still need the U.S. apostille, but then you often need what's called embassy legalization.
Meaning?
Meaning that country's embassy or consulate here in the U.S. also has to certify the document after the State Department puts its apostille on it. They haven't signed up for the streamlined Hague system, so they stick to the older method.
Wow, okay. So knowing if your destination country is a Hague member or not is really step one.
Absolutely critical. Because skipping that federal apostille or not getting the extra legalization if needed, our source says it can seriously derail things. School enrollment, getting residency permits for your kids, applying for dual citizenship, getting a foreign passport for the child, even enrolling in local medical insurance overseas. Big stuff.
Yeah, those are major life things. So it sounds like more than just a tiny niche issue. Who exactly are we talking about that really needs to jump through this hoop?
Well, it's surprisingly broad. The source highlights quite a few common scenarios. Think about families moving to, say, Spain, Portugal, or Greece under those golden visa rules. Their residency often hinges on authenticated documents like this.
Okay.
Or U.S. military parents. They needed to place a child in Department of Defense schools overseas sometimes. Remote workers, maybe in Japan or South Korea, claiming family benefits. That often requires authenticated proof.
Right.
And then there are lineage cases. Parents proving ancestry for an Italian or Irish passport for their child. Or even students applying to international boarding schools. They often ask for it.
So really quite a range.
It is. And I think what's fascinating is just how many different situations rely on this one specific process. It really shows how interconnected things are now and why having this kind of internationally recognized proof is becoming so important for families living global lives. You don't want your kids' opportunities blocked by paperwork.
Definitely not. Okay, so given how crucial it is and how easy it sounds to maybe miss a step, let's get into the nitty-gritty. How do you actually get this done?
Right. Process time.
Now, the source gives a super clear checklist. And look, we'll put the full list, every single item, plus the exact mailing address in our show notes for you. Because honestly, the main reason files get delayed, missing one single piece of paper. So attention to detail. It's everything here.
Couldn't agree more. Precision matters.
Okay, so first up, obviously, you need the document itself, the original FS-240, or an official replacement copy.
Right. And we'll come back to that replacement copy idea in a sec because it's important for planning.
Good point. Then you need Form DS-4194. That's the authentication request form. This seems to be a key spot for errors.
It is.
You've got to check the box for consular report of birth abroad in Section 4. Use your child's name exactly as it shows on the FS-240, no variations. And provide a U.S. return address, that's non-negotiable, right? A U.S. address.
Yes, the State Department requires a U.S. address for the return shipment. So if you're already abroad, you'll need a friend, family member, or maybe a service in the U.S. to receive it.
Okay, good heads up. What else?
You need a clear copy of the photo page of the passport of the person requesting it, usually the parent.
Okay.
And the tenant. This is another potential pitfall. It's $20 per document you need apostilled. And critically, it must be a cashier's check or a money order, payable to the U.S. Department of State.
No personal checks, no credit cards.
Nope. Cashier's check or money order only. Get that wrong, and it's an automatic rejection.
Ouch. Okay. What else is on the checklist?
You need a prepaid self-addressed return label. The source recommends FedEx Priority or UPS Saver for tracking and speed. Don't cheap out on the return shipping.
Good advice. And a cover letter.
Yes, a simple cover letter. Include your daytime phone number and email address just in case they need to contact you. And definitely put your return tracking number on that cover letter. Helps connect everything.
Okay. Anything else?
Just one more thing. If any supporting documents you happen to include are in a foreign language, you need to attach a certified translation with the translator's certification page.
Got it. So that's the package. Original or replacement CRBA, the DS-4194, filled out perfectly, passport copy, the right payment, return label, and cover letter.
That's the core package. Now, back to that original versus replacement point you raised. What if you really don't want to mail your child's original FS-240? It feels risky.
Yeah, I'd be nervous about that.
Understandably. So the guide does suggest you can order a certified replacement copy first. You use Form DS-5542 for that. But, and this is a big but for planning.
Let me guess, it takes time.
It takes time. The source says allow 4 to 6 weeks just to get that replacement copy. So if you're on a deadline, you might have to risk sending the original, carefully packaged, of course.
Okay, that's a critical planning point. 4 to 6 weeks just for the copy, then the apostille processing time.
Exactly. So step 1 might be ordering that copy, if you have the time. Step 2, fill out that DS-4194 meticulously. Double-check the child's name, check the CRBA box, U.S. return address.
Right.
Step 3, package it all up. The source says put everything in a sealed inner envelope. Then put that inside your main mailing envelope, which should have the return label already affixed. And absolutely no staples anywhere on the documents or the forms.
No staples. Got it. Why no staples?
Federal document handling procedures are just very strict. Staples can damage the documents or interfere with scanning processes. Just avoid them. Use paper clips if you must group things temporarily, but remove them before sealing.
Okay. Then step 4. Mail it off.
Mail it to the Office of Authentications. Again, the exact address is crucial. We'll have it in the show notes. It's a specific P.O. Box address in Sterling, Virginia.
And you mentioned no walk-ins, right? Mail only.
Still mail only.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed. The State Department is firm on that.
Okay. And step 5 is just wait.
Track and wait, basically.
Yeah.
Standard processing time once they receive it is currently listed as about 10-12 business days, plus shipping time both ways.
So maybe 3 weeks total turnaround if everything goes perfectly?
Could be, but that's if there are 0 errors in your submission.
Which brings us to the pitfalls. The hidden costs, as the source calls them. Rejection delays. You said 1 error can add 3 weeks.
Easily. They reject the file, mail it all back to you. You have to figure out what's wrong, fix it, and mail it back again. That whole cycle adds significant time. And it's not just time. It's stress, especially if you have a deadline looming.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And the source had a case study, right? Sarah and David.
Yes, it really illustrates the point well. They were software engineers, moved to Lisbon, Portugal, had a newborn.
Okay.
They had just 10 days to get their baby enrolled in the local Portuguese healthcare system. Critical stuff. So they rushed. They mailed the baby's FS-240 directly to the State Department for an apostille.
Uh-oh. What did they miss?
They missed the DS-4194 form. They thought, apparently, that form was only needed for state-issued documents, like a regular birth certificate, not the federal CRBA.
Oh, no. So what happened?
Predictably, the file was rejected, sent back. It took 3 weeks just for them to get the rejected package back in Lisbon. They were obviously panicking by then.
I bet. So did they figure it out?
They sought help, realized their mistake, got the DS-4194 filled out, added the correct payment, which they'd also missed initially, and resubmitted everything correctly.
And the outcome?
This time it worked. The Apostille CRBA got back to them in Portugal in 11 calendar days, and the Portuguese authorities accepted it immediately for the healthcare enrollment.
Wow. Close call, but it shows how one mistake, one misunderstanding about which form to use can cause a huge delay and a ton of stress.
Absolutely. It highlights how these administrative processes, if you don't navigate them perfectly, can directly impact really crucial things like healthcare access for your family. It really raises the question, how can families avoid falling into these traps?
Well, the source mentions services that help with this.
It did. It mentioned that there are services out there that specialize in this. They essentially pre-check your documents for errors before submission, handle the mailing via daily courier runs, and give you updates through online portals. They aim to prevent those rejection delays, usually for a flat fee, of course.
Right, so it's an option if you want peace of mind or you're really pressed for time.
Exactly. It's about mitigating that risk of delay by essentially outsourcing the double-checking and submission process to people who do it all the time.
Makes sense. Okay, let's add some of those frequently asked questions. These often clear up common mix-ups. First one. Can I just get my CRBA copy notarized? Is a notarized copy okay to send?
No, absolutely not. Big red flag there. Federal documents like the CRBA should never be altered or notarized. Doing so actually invalidates them. You must send either the original certified FS-240 or an official certified replacement copy obtained from the State Department. Nothing else.
Okay, crystal clear on that. Next, can I walk my request into the Office of Authentications, maybe if I'm in the D.C. area?
Still no. We touched on this, but it bears repeating. The State Department strictly prohibits walk-in service for these authentications. Mail submission is the only way.
Got it. What if the paper itself, the FS-240, gets torn or damaged? Can I tape it?
Nope. Another definite no. If the certificate is torn, taped, glued, laminated, or significantly damaged, it's considered void. You absolutely have to order a replacement using that DS-5542 form we mentioned earlier. Don't try to repair it yourself.
Okay, order a replacement? Good to know. Here's one we probably hear a lot. Does my child's U.S. passport also need a separate apostille for these purposes?
Generally, no. For things like school enrollment or residency applications abroad, the requesting institutions, the schools, the migration offices, they almost always rely specifically on the apostilled CRBA. The passport proves identity and citizenship, sure, but the apostilled CRBA is usually the required proof of the birth event abroad and its official recognition.
Okay, so focus on the CRBA apostille. And finally, how long is the apostille itself valid? Does it expire?
Technically, the apostille seal itself doesn't have an expiration date. It's valid indefinitely. However.
There's always a however.
There often is. Some foreign institutions, for their own internal rules or policies, might require that the underlying document, the CRBA in this case, was issued recently, often within the last 6 months.
Okay, so the apostille's fine, but they might want a fresh CRBA.
Exactly. So if the institution you're dealing with has that kind of freshness requirement, you'd unfortunately need to go through the process again. Order a new certified copy of the CRBA, and then get a new apostille on that new copy.
So the key is always check the specific requirements of the institution asking for the document.
Always. That's the golden rule.
Okay. So wrapping this up, what's the big picture takeaway for everyone listening? This deep dive, I think, really shows how something that sounds like minor paperwork, the Consular Report of Birth Abroad and its apostille, is actually a critical key. It unlocks major life steps when you're living internationally.
Absolutely.
We've covered the what it is, the why it's needed, that whole international trust thing, and the really crucial how. The specific forms, the exact payment method, the mailing address, even those common mistakes like Sarah and David's story, that can cost you weeks.
And looking at it broadly, it just underscores how vital it is to be really well informed about these specific bureaucratic paths when you're navigating life across borders. It's not just about getting a visa anymore. It's about maintaining your family's status and access continuously.
Right.
Which leads to, I think, an important question for you, the listener, to think about.
Yeah.
How can understanding these sort of granular processes, like getting an apostille for CRBA, how can that knowledge empower your family, not just to avoid problems, but to more confidently chase those global opportunities and build a stable, successful life wherever in this interconnected world you choose to be?